This project is based on telling Scottish folklore stories, how these stories are used as a way to explain the unexplainable, and as a way to warn others of danger. The book and the artifacts are executed through the use of bright colors, illustrations, and interactive techniques to engage you with the stories being told in the book. This book and artifacts associated with it are intended for a primarily young adult audience, but this can expand to those with an interest in Scottish folklore, illustrations, and seeking media with interesting storytelling. The project is inspired by children's pop-up books, as well as fables told to children with the use of bright colors and illustrations. However, this innocent nature is turned upside down and twisted to create this form of a dark fairy tale. The reason it matters is that folk stories, especially those featured within the book, are tied to Scottish culture and landscape. Often these stories have a deeper meaning of warning against an upcoming storm or explaining natural phenomenons, as well as it gives you an insight and an appreciation for the past generations telling these stories. By reading the book, you not only learn the origins of these tales, but each section of the book takes you into a different world full of interactive illustrations and interactive techniques. There has been a rising interest of younger adults engaging with Scottish folklore. This can be seen through social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, where short term content is very popular, talking about Celtic and Scottish folklore and stories, have themes of sustainability and looking after the environment, which are values that a lot of younger adults hold dear to their hearts, as well as a growing interest in the Gaelic language and awareness of Scottish culture and Scottish landscape. The book also has a sense of nostalgia to it, but it's not targeted towards children. So the younger adults engaging with it can relive past memories of reading an interactive or pop-up book, but this time the subject matter is a bit darker and more for a bit of a mature audience. It's also a unique and interesting way to capture the attention of younger adults. It's not a standard book. It's not pages full of text. It has illustrations. It has interesting layouts and colors and gets you to interact and seek the information within the book. It also helps to promote Scottish culture and tales that some might not know, especially since I chose more unusual stories to tell in the book. And I think the impact it would have is for people who are from Scotland who wants to learn more about their own culture and people who just have an interest in folklore in general, but the lasting impact of it would be to promote Scottish culture and traditions in a modern format and a modern media. What has changed since last year? Well, I've scrapped the idea of creating 3D posters as I soon came to realize that actually the pop-up book would be a lot of work and effort, and creating the posters would simply just be a bit impossible, especially to make them look good. Also, at the beginning of the year, my focus was on phobias and fears, which also relates back to the project that I did before Christmas last year surrounding phobias. But I faced a few issues with the phobias. Um, then I focused on having the book be about phobias popular in Scotland and tying it to Scottish culture. However, that also didn't work. I was made aware that my project seemed like there was two ideas put into one without one cohesive project. So that also had to change. But I've also included things like posters. So the posters never end being 3D, but the posters had a focus of promoting the book. And I've also created the A5 prints, which was a newer idea, and the interactive bookmarks. But then I had to scrap the idea of Scottish phobias and focus more on Scottish folklore, which has a similar purpose of warning people and using morality and ways to warn others, kind of like phobias do. So it kept in a similar kind of theme. I then created posters which weren't standalone pieces or were made to promote the book and the identity of the project, as well as creating bookmarks and the A5 prints, which kind of helped to tie everything together and keeping up with the theme of using of books and paper and print to create this whole project. What I could have changed, I was on time with everything, but I feel like I should have practiced the bookmaking and bookbinding a little bit more, or perhaps creating more prototypes, especially a prototype of final version, as my prototypes before that were very on a much of a smaller scale, as I assumed that it wouldn't be as difficult as it ended up being. And because of this, I faced many challenges with binding the book, as the paper I used was a lot thicker than the paper I used for the prototypes, for example, so I didn't consider pages cracking or perhaps not lining up correctly, as well as some issues with the pop-up elements, as they didn't really fit on some pages that I intended them to be on, for example, as well as the creating the cover for the book. I faced many challenges with the spine, for example, being a bit too big, but I just didn't really have time to change it at that point, or the design of the spine kind of being off center. So yeah, I wish I have had a bit more time to create more prototypes, or even a prototype of the final book, just to spot all the issues and the small little mistakes here and there that I could spot and fix, and then improve the final version. However, even with all the kind of mistakes that the book might have, I still am quite proud of it, and I still think that it's a really cool, functional piece of design. Now, I'm not sure if I can imagine the book being mass produced for a wider public and being featured in like Warstones, for example. But I could definitely see the book being featured in like heritage centers or community centers or exhibitions to do with Scottish folklore and culture to kind of promote those ideas and values. But yeah, I think areas that are trying to promote Scottish identity, Scottish folklore, and the kind of values, that's where I could see the book being present at, especially with the prints and the bookmarks and the posters. It's a good way of giving those out to people and people having a piece of my work with them, if it's a bookmark that functions as a bookmark, or the prints that someone can have and pin to their wall. They have a piece of that book with them that then further on helps to promote not only the book but Scottish folklore. This project is definitely something that I would like to revisit at some point after graduating as well, just to improve on the few mistakes I have encountered, because I do think that's a really cool piece of it's a cool piece of media, a cool piece of physical media as well. Yeah, I'm just really happy with it.